This is Pam Haynes, Los Rios trustee and Board of Governors Vice President. I want to wish the League a very happy birthday. 30 years and going strong, and I wish you many, many more years to come. You've been fighting and advocating on behalf of trustees, on behalf of CEOs, and on behalf of our students system-wide. Keep it going strong. Happy birthday.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adrienne Gray, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the annual convention, which for 2.5 decades has gathered leaders from across the state to share ideas and recognize our success. This year's theme, Resilience Reimagined, Advancing California Community Colleges, reinforces our commitment to do what it takes to succeed in fulfilling our promise to California by offering quality higher education with access and opportunity for all students. Your hard work and commitment to students and our communities is evident by your presence at this event. Throughout this conference, our sessions will be sponsored by business partners and affiliate organizations with which our colleges work to support our students. These presidential, leadership, and associate corporate partners make an annual commitment to sponsor league events and programs throughout the year. This afternoon's opening general session is sponsored by our presidential partners, Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Rude, and Romo, Constellation Energy, Ellucian, Spur, School Project for Utility Rate Reduction, Lieber Cassidy Whitmore, and PARS. Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Rude, and Romo is a full-service law firm with over 200 attorneys in 9 offices throughout California, with an emphasis in employment, labor, construction, and education. Through decades of dedicated commitment to high-quality legal work and providing consistently practical management solutions, AALRR has earned a reputation as one of California's leading law firms. Constellation Energy offers education grants to schools within local community organizations through their E2 Energy to Education and Community Champions program. They also serve as the League's partner in the Electricity Consortium, providing green options for colleges and districts on direct access. Ellucian is the market leader in charting the digital future of higher education with a portfolio of cloud-ready technology solutions and services. Serving more than 2,700 customers in over 50 countries, reaching over 20 million students, Ellucian delivers student information systems, SIS, finance and HR, financial aid, integration, analytics, recruiting, retention, and advancement software solutions. Ellucian also supports the higher education community with a range of professional services that include application software implementation, management consulting, and grants services. The School Project for Utility Rate Reduction, SPUR, a JPA, aggregates purchasing power for California public agencies in procurement of solar power and energy storage, LED lighting, electricity demand response, telecommunications and networking, natural gas, electricity, and utility expense management. Their master contracts streamline procurement, saving time and money for hundreds of public agencies across the state, including many community colleges. PARS works exclusively with community college districts and other public agencies to design and implement strategic retirement solutions that address specific organizational and budgetary needs. In challenging economic times like today, PARS offers the Supplementary Retirement Plan, a cost-saving retirement incentive program. PARS, in partnership with the League, provides the Pension Rate Stabilization Program, an IRS-approved trust program to pre-fund STRS and PERS costs. Lieber Cassidy Whitmore has proudly supported community college districts in California for over 40 years. Their dedicated attorneys provide expert counsel, representation, and training to districts across the state. Leaders in preventative law, LCW provides over 800 workshops a year on education, employment, and labor law issues. Thank you to the League's presidential corporate partners. And now, a special welcome to the convention from the League's CEO and President, Larry Galizio.
Well, thank you, President Gray. So as this next slide will show, although California Community College CEOs and trustees aren't necessarily traversing 2,300 miles through the Alps and Pyrenees of France, both Tour de France cyclists and CC leadership require an enormous amount of skill, stamina, an ability to navigate dynamic and often difficult terrain, and a powerful sense of purpose and dedication to the mission. At this, our 30th anniversary, in this exceptionally challenging year, we want to express our gratitude and honor the essential work that all of you do in support of students and our communities throughout the state. We at the League view our mission as akin to the support teams that assist those Tour de France riders. There we are in the yellow car with the yellow jersey. Our goal is to provide indispensable support throughout your journey. In addition to the League staff, The Community College Athletic Association, which is part of the league, does incredible work. And no, that is not a typo. There are only 4 members of the 3C2A staff, which runs competitive athletics for 110 of our colleges, some of whom field multiple competitive athletic teams. I'd like to especially recognize Interim Executive Director Jennifer Cardone, who's had to navigate an extraordinary set of circumstances and exigencies and has done a remarkable job. In addition, the league works to support the California EDGE Coalition. Led by Executive Director Zima Creason, it's a coalition of business, labor, and other stakeholder groups focused on career education and workforce development. We also want to honor and show gratitude to our league board. This 12-member board is the operational board of the league. There are 5 officers from each of our policy board and 2 from the classified Senate for CS. They steer the ship and do amazing work. This year has been very unique in that both under the leadership of Trustee Board Chair and President Adrian Gray and CEO Board President Pam Luster, both policy boards have aligned their goals, and they are listed here. You could see advancing equity, supporting DEI work, advocating for those base resources, and also support and resources for our colleges in confronting the pandemic. Additionally, as I mentioned before, we have 2 policy boards. We at the league wish to thank and recognize and honor our trustee board, which is a 21-member board representing all 445 locally elected trustees statewide. And it includes our student trustee, Joshua Elizondo from Santa Monica College, who is appropriately placed right in the middle of that photo. Our other policy board is our CEO board. The 15-member board is elected by their peers in their respective regions, and there is also 4 at-large members. So in addition to doing the hard work in the local districts, they also take a statewide role, and we're very appreciative of that work. So just to give you an idea, just a snapshot of some of the work that the league has done this year, I'll go through this quickly. Our leadership development led by Director Carmen Sandoval. As you can see, we've had over almost 50 webinars since the pandemic with trustees and CEOs sharing valuable information, how they've been adapting to the difficult circumstances. We've maintained our leadership development work for both CEOs and trustees, as well as helping our student trustees at our workshops. For our district services, led by the recently promoted Chief Operating Officer, Lisa Malloy, we've expanded the library consortium as colleges go online, and those open education and online resources have become even more critical for our students. We've added the library service platform, done some great work on solar and storage project, and with the deferrals being a challenge, cash-strapped districts are able to utilize our TRAN program. So important work there. And speaking of that library services platform, Amy Beadle is the leader of that work with the league, and she has done really incredible work trying to put this together. 111 participating colleges. We're going to continue to advocate for more dollars. And we want to recognize and thank the statewide academic senate, who invested $444,000 to reduce by 18% the cost to districts for joining the library services platform. As all of you well know, we're based in Sacramento for a reason. Important decisions are made that affect our students, our communities, our districts, and our colleges. These are just a few of the accomplishments and what we've done through the leadership of our government relations director, Andrew Martinez. a couple of things I'd like to point out. We were very aggressive in pushing for 2 additional years of the hold harmless, and also making sure that the COVID-19 expenses and costs, those unanticipated costs borne by the districts and the colleges, were exempt from the 50% law. We're proud of that work. Our fiscal service unit, led by Sarah Kiesling, our Chief Financial Officer. And you can see there, in addition to sponsorship of 3C2A and EDGE, there are 14 affinity groups of trustees, CEOs, and others who are doing really important work. And I wanted to highlight our newest members, the Equity Avengers, the LGBTQ Caucus, as well as the Central Valley Caucus. The League is a proud sponsor of all of these important organizations. So everyone's got a podcast, so we wanted to make sure that we also had a podcast. We're very excited about this. So next, probably later this month or early next month, the League will start its first podcast called Leading Community Colleges in California. And not only will we interview and have in-depth conversations with trustees and CEOs in California and other leaders in California community colleges and elsewhere, talking about what they're confronting currently, we also want to find out about their leadership philosophy, their influences, hobbies, important books. So look for an announcement for the first podcast, which will feature San Diego City College District Chancellor Constance Carroll. We look forward to that. In addition to all the amazing work that CEOs and trustees do at their local districts and at the state level, we have a student-centered funding formula task force that the League is proud to support. As you can see, this group of masochists, CEOs and trustees, is doing the hard work of trying to adjust the formula to exigencies that were simply not anticipated when this formula was put into force. Additionally, we are proud to support the Affordability, Food, Housing, and Access Task Force. You can see many of your colleagues listed here. This is a dedicated group focusing on the basic needs of our students. Additionally, we're proud to support and work with the Racial Equity and Inclusive Excellence Task Force that has recently been put together, and they're doing important work to confront racial inequities and looking for actionable recommendations and activities that can be taken at the state and at the local level. So I know this has been a tough year, but there's also been some good news, and I wanted to leave us with two. One is, regardless of your view of the national presidential election, the fact that the First Lady is a community college professor is something to celebrate. And it's also something to leverage, and we plan to do that. So we're very excited about having a community college professor in the White House when she's not teaching at Northern Virginia Community College. And finally, another, I think, very promising and exciting outcome of this year, with no recounts, no lawsuits, no protests, Los Rios trustee and CCCT board member Pam Haynes, as of yesterday, is the president-elect of the Board of Governors. So on behalf of the League staff, on behalf of policy boards and the League board, we want to congratulate President-elect Pam Haynes, and we look forward to working with her and then with Vice President-elect Amy Costa and all her colleagues. So I would say the state of the League is strong. We are doing well. We have a lot of work to do, and we look forward to working with all of you, and we really hope you enjoy this convention. So now it's my great pleasure to as we look, we're going to look toward the future a lot. I think in the conversations over the next few days, in all of the keynote addresses and also the meetings and the sessions, a lot of looking toward the future. But we also want to honor and recognize the past. And at this, the League's 30th anniversary, we want to recognize one individual, but for whom we would not be here. The League would not be an entity. Before we run this video, I want to thank past president of the trustee board and current trustee of Glendale Community College District, Ann Ransford, for her inspiration and work on this video and this honorific, and also the entire Glendale Community College District Board, and also my colleague, Rina Kassim. And with that, please enjoy this video.
About a year before the League was officially organized, two of my good friends, Bob Jensen and David Vire, over drinks, I witnessed the two of them discuss, debate, strategize, and write out on a cocktail napkin the table a year later would become the Community College League of California.
We needed a group to be able to work with the legislature to advocate on behalf of districts and community colleges as a system.
I was on the board of what was then CACC, and I remember Roberta Mason being the chair of the board. Her big desire was to try to bring David Vire back to California, and she was successful in doing that. David was able to use his personality to bring people together and make sense of the system in California.
And we were lucky to have the right person at the right time. A leader with great skills, good communication, and that diplomatic touch. And David Vire was that person.
David and I did some wonderful work together. We moved the Vineyard Symposium to the League. We moved the Asilomar Women's Leadership Conference to the League. And in addition, we started CEO mentoring programs. One day, I was asked to become the interim CEO of the League. As I took on that role, I saw again what a fantastic leader David was. I didn't need to change a thing.
I've known David for over 22 years. I know him to be a powerhouse behind the League. He helped to make it a stronger voice, a more influential presence, and he helped to highlight the importance of community college constituents, whether they were faculty, classified employees or educators, or whether they were the CEO of the organization.
I always appreciate and respect his kindness, his leadership, and his fearless advocacy of community colleges. He never was apologetic, he never backed down, and he's always been a role model to me and to many other CEOs, as you heard today.
Were it not for the League coming along, we probably would still be a pretty rough confederation in California. So I credit David Vire and the League with the wonderful system of California community colleges we have today.
Thank you, David, for your service to the Community College League of California. The League that we have today wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for all your contributions to our system and for the amazing work that you did at the League. Congratulations.
You're the chief architect of this organization and the master builder. And without your pioneering efforts to structure this organization in a way that supports the districts and supports the CEOs who have incredibly difficult jobs and the trustees, we would not be here for our 30th anniversary, and you deserve the recognition.
It is an absolute privilege and an honor to work with such a distinguished leader. Your years of experience and cool wisdom has been just the kind of guidance our school, our staff, our faculty, and our students have needed at this time. You have elevated us to become one of the gems in our great city of Glendale.
You deserve all the accolades bestowed upon you for your excellent leadership to education throughout California. we congratulate you on behalf of all of our students and employees.
Thank you, David, for making Glendale Community College shine, for your outstanding and wonderful and fair leadership of our faculty and staff, for your impeccable taste of our campus, and for helping all of us as trustees do a better job.
I am so honored to express my sincere gratitude for all your contributions to the community colleges across the state, and most importantly, Glendale Community College. I am thrilled to know that you are a founder of the Community College League and that we are the beneficiaries of your outstanding leadership and commitment. Thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you, Dr. Viar, for your leadership and guidance during this very challenging time. The Board of Trustees, faculty, staff, and students truly appreciate all that you do for GCC. Congratulations from all of us.
First of all, special thanks to all those who participated in this video, the individuals we heard from who were talking about working with me. I learned so much from each one of them. They made such a difference and made it possible for me to do some of the things that I did. And for that, I want them to be recognized as well. It really is about teamwork, people coming together to support the greatest invention, the community colleges. And I'm glad the League has been a part of that, and I've been able to be a part of the League's history. So let's all stay focused on the success of our community colleges. The people of our state depend on it. Let's keep moving forward.
I'm not unmuted. There we go. Thank you, Larry, for the inspiring video about Dr. David Viar. I've met him many times at conferences, but I learned something watching the video. It's important for us as we chart our future to remember our history. So for 30 years, the Community College League of California has brought together our 73 community college districts under the leadership of locally elected trustees and the chief executive officers of our districts and colleges. We are very pleased to welcome the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office and community college associations to this year's convention. The work of these associations and others are essential to the strength of California community colleges. Through working together, we meet the needs of our students. Thank you for your contributions. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Aspen Institute Vice President John Kroger. John Kroger has devoted his career to public service and higher education. He currently serves as Vice President of the Aspen Institute, where he runs the Rodell Public Leadership Program. John's previous work includes service as President of Reed College, Chief Learning Officer of the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps, Attorney General of Oregon, and visiting professor and leader in residence at Harvard University. A Marine Corps veteran, John received his BA and MA degrees in philosophy from Yale and his JD from Harvard Law School. His blog, Leadership in Higher Education, is featured on Inside Higher Ed. Welcome, John, to the convention. Before I turn the session over to John for Q&A, please type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to be addressed at the end of the keynote. Take it away, John.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation to come talk with you this morning. I am really honored to be your guest. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the 2020 election nationally and what it means for us as educators and for you specifically as leaders of California's community colleges. First, real briefly, I wanted to take a moment to simply thank you all for the remarkable work you've done over the past year. The theme of this conference is resilience, and honestly, I can't imagine a more appropriate label to choose. This year has been just an immense challenge. Nationally, we've seen about 10% of higher education staff and faculty laid off due to reduced revenue and budget shortages. We've seen a real drop in enrollment, and not just in areas we expected, like international students, but also in community college enrollment in many places, which is a remarkable thing in an economic downturn. And of course, we've all had the experience of taking thousands of in-person classrooms and converting them to a virtual space. Those challenges are remarkable. And in the face of those challenges, all of the people who are attending the conference today have shown immense resilience and immense persistence. You've continued to put your students first. You've continued to provide really great transformative education to over 2 million Californians. And so I want to say something just on behalf of all my fellow citizens that we don't say enough, and that is to thank you for your remarkable work. You've shown immense courage and innovation and hard work during this year, and we are all in your debt. If there's any consolation as we start to head toward the end of the year, I think it's that we are going to see things get better. And I would point to a couple of things. First, as most people know, we've got a couple of vaccines that have cleared their initial testing, and the results have been really favorable. So most people expect vaccines to begin to be delivered to the American people in the beginning of next year. And while that will be a slow phased rollout, it will start to lift the burden of this pandemic off of all of our shoulders. There's also a real different political climate in the country in the aftermath of the 2020 election. And that's what I'd like to talk about this morning. I'm going to talk for a few minutes and then leave plenty of room for questions. So if you have questions as we go along, please put the questions in the chat box, and we will, or the Q&A box, and we'll take those at the end of my observations. So I don't know how you felt about the 2020 election. I will simply tell you that in my house, we were glued to our TVs and computer screens on election night, waiting for definitive results, and then sat there for days and days waiting for the race to be called for president. And as an experience, it was at times confusing. It feels like the results are complex. It's hard to know what to make of the voting patterns across the country. And so what I want to do this morning is just talk a little bit about some of my observations and the way in which that election will have implications for your work in the coming years. So I think there were two big takeaways from the election that will matter to you going forward. The first is that we have real community college advocates in the White House, probably for the first time in history. Certainly Joe Biden has long been an advocate for community colleges. He was a supporter of free community colleges, college education nationwide, long before that was a sort of a popular, trendy thing to do. But the real news, I think, is our new First Lady. Dr. Jill Biden, as Larry mentioned in his opening remarks, is a dedicated and very experienced community college professor. She taught from 1993 to 2008 at Delaware Technical and Community College in her and Joe Biden's home state of Delaware. And during that time, she got her doctorate. And I think the title of her dissertation really says it all for us. That dissertation was entitled Student Retention at Community College, Meeting Students' Needs. What's remarkable is that Dr. Biden did not terminate her teaching career when her husband, Joe, was elected vice president. Remarkably, she continued to teach. She took a position at NOVA, North Virginia Community College. It's one of the largest community colleges in the country, and continued her career as an English professor. She was famous for grading English composition papers on Air Force Two while she flew to international meetings. And she continued as Second Lady of the United States to do office hours. I think she's probably the only community college president in history that's had Secret Service agents posted outside her door during office hours. And friends tell me that she had the agents dress up like students in the hopes that they would be inconspicuous, though I doubt that fooled anyone. Remarkably, again, she's indicated in the last week that she intends to continue teaching while she's First Lady of the United States. I share all this detail because I really think it matters. We're going to have someone in the White House who truly understands your work, cares about your work, and will advocate for it. I see the period coming before us as less one where people will try to change your work and more that they will try to support it. There is, I think, though, more to the story of what happened on election night. I think my second big takeaway for you is that the American people voted for mixed government. Joe Biden won the national election for president quite handily, but nationally, Democrats lost seats in Congress and they failed to take the Senate. We won't know who controls the Senate until the special election in Georgia in January, which will determine 2 seats. But nevertheless, the fact that Democrats are at best going to have a razor-thin margin in the Senate really changes the prospects for the administration. Most people in Washington believe that even if the Democrats do succeed in the Georgia special election, they won't have the votes to change the filibuster rule. And what that means is any of Joe Biden's very ambitious agenda for higher education, the ideas that he ran on, will not make it into law unless they receive bipartisan support with significant Republican support in the Senate. That just means that it's going to be much harder for this new administration to successfully move its agenda. So what does that mean to you as community college educators? Elections have consequences. So let's start with a couple things that I don't think will happen. Things that might have happened if the Democrats had been more successful nationally in their down ticket races, but have a very a hard chance of happening now. The first, I think, is that we're going to see a different COVID stimulus bill emerge in the next few months. As most of you probably recall, when the COVID outbreak began last spring, Congress came together and they passed a COVID relief and stimulus bill. That bill did provide assistance for higher education, though I think most higher education advocates would say that it was inadequate to meet the real needs that we've got. Since that time, we've had total stalemate. There hasn't been a follow-up bill, though it's been debated for months. I do think that deadlock will break. I am pretty confident that we're going to see a COVID stimulus bill emerge in the next few months. But I have to say, again, that the election had consequences. That bill, when it emerges, will probably be smaller than it might otherwise have been, probably in the range of $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion, not 2 or 3, as Democrats had talked about before the election. And I think the assistance for higher education in that bill is going to be smaller than it otherwise might have been. I don't think it's going to be nothing. I think it's going to be something. But I don't think it's going to solve all of our funding problems in the community college world nationwide. I think the other likely outcome is a major impact on the fate of Senator Bernie Sanders' proposal for tuition-free 4-year college education for families that make less than $125,000 per year. As many people have probably followed, the proposal for so-called free college has very strong Democratic support, and President-elect Biden supported it during his campaign. But I think that proposal is going to have a lot of trouble emerging from a split Congress or mixed government. The reality is roughly 70% of voters on the Republican side oppose tuition-free public higher education. This is in part, I think, because most of those voters think it will result in higher taxes. I think others think it smacks of socialism. I have to say a miracle could happen, and tuition-free public 4-year college education could emerge, but I suspect that this one is going to be dead on arrival. All that said, I think there are some very positive things that can emerge in the next year or two. And let me highlight, I think, a couple of things that are likely to happen. First, I think we should focus on executive orders. When the presidency and Congress are split, when we have mixed governments, presidents are generally forced to rely more upon executive orders, which are unilateral actions that don't require congressional support or authorization. It's important for all of us to remember that a president can't do everything by executive order. And in particular, presidents cannot spend large amounts of taxpayer dollars without congressional authorization. So there are very real limits. But nevertheless, presidents can take important steps without congressional approval. And I would expect at least 2 to emerge in the next few months. First, I would expect the Biden administration to take executive action to roll back the changes to Title IX under the Trump administration. As many people have noted, those changes were very controversial. I would also say, as a lawyer, the regulations were 2,000 pages long, and the sheer inability of lawyers, let alone administrators, professors, student leaders, to wade through the 2,000 pages and figure out what is supposed to happen moving forward was very difficult. I think that caused massive confusion. I would expect an executive order and regulations to follow that will bring significant reform and simplification back to Title IX. I also expect the Biden administration to move an executive order on debt relief for students with large loans. The Trump administration issued some temporary forbearance on that front, and I would expect something even more substantial from President Biden. He endorsed during his campaign a number of measures, and most of those would require legislation, but not all. And so expect early in his term for some action to help students deal with their student loan debt burden. Two other things that I think are possible legislatively, despite the split in Congress. One is a possible major expansion of the Pell Grant. President Biden campaigned on doubling the size of the grant. And I think that's still possible. The Pell Grant, unlike the so-called free college proposals, has long had real bipartisan support. I think lawmakers view it as assistance to students, not as assistance to institutions or colleges. And I think that's made it easier to gain bipartisan support for the program. I would not be surprised to see a major increase in the grant, and that will be significant for community colleges nationwide. We often don't, I think, focus on it enough, but roughly 1/3 of Pell Grant students are not in four-year college programs. They attend community colleges. Another big piece of that is that the Pell Grant may become more flexible. And again, I think this will matter greatly in the community college world. As you all know, currently it can really be used for tuition, room, and board. There's calls to expand that, to make it more flexible, to be able to use the Pell Grant for living expenses beyond tuition, room, and board, and to replace wages when workers are out of work or to take time off from work in order to pursue additional education or additional training. And that's going to be really powerful if that happens. It will make it easier for your students to enroll, to afford their educations, and to complete their degrees. The last thing I would note is that though tuition-free four-year college may not pass, there's a real possibility that free community college on the national level could move forward. I think this is in part because the politics nationally of support for community colleges is different from that for Senator Sanders' proposal. There's a community college in virtually every congressional district, and so every member of Congress, regardless of party, has a real stake in those community colleges thriving. And I think community colleges right now are seen as somehow more relevant, more essential, more focused on job training than many four-year degree programs. So I have some hope that the notion of national free community college still has a future. Interestingly, Dr. Jill Biden spoke about this yesterday. So she was at an education event as the next first lady, and she was asked about free community college, and she said, and I quote, "Joe and I will stand by you in those efforts because we know just how crucial this work is, because we know how our economy depends on it, because we know our students deserve nothing less." So even as talk may die down about free four-year college, free two-year community college is probably an idea that still has an important future. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, well, gee, that won't help us in California because we've already moved decisively in that direction. And the simple thing I would say is that any national free community college bill will not penalize states that have already moved forward on that idea. I expect them to be receiving significant financial assistance that will make it easier for them to design and deliver great educational programs. And so if that idea does move forward, I think it will be a tremendous boost to community colleges in California. In sum, and before we get to questions, I want to say I think this administration is going to be really good for the community college community. I don't think there's going to be a lot of push to change what you do, but I do think this administration is going to strongly support what you do, and that will make all the difference. I don't think we can take progress for granted. I think it's going to be a hard fight, and I think there's going to be a lot of effort to whittle down support so that it's less relevant. But I do think if we keep focused and work closely with the administration, there's a lot of good that can happen. You know, this has been a hard year, but I do think there's a lot of positivity to look forward to. I do expect in the coming year that Congress is going to move forward with more funding for community colleges. And I do believe that as a vaccine comes online, it's going to reduce some of the enormous burden that all of you have been carrying, you know, as parents, as family members, and as educators. Finally, I want to just return to my opening remarks and just reiterate, I think all of you have done a remarkable job in this crisis. You've worked really hard to take care of our students. You've done an amazing job of responding to a pandemic that some people predicted, but most of us were not prepared for. And you really deserve all of our thanks and gratitude. And with that, why don't we move and take some questions from the audience? I'm really interested to hear what people would like to talk about.
So John, while people are figuring out what questions they want to ask, may I take presidential privilege and ask a question?
Of course, of course.
All right. So, you know, as you mentioned, one interesting consequence has been the enrollment drop. And as you know, community colleges are countercyclical.
Yep.
And yet here we are.
Yep.
And certainly our students are arguably the most vulnerable students, especially in a place like California. But one, I would say, or I would just ask, you know, what's your take on that and in terms of the future? And as a former college president at a different type of institution, but are there things that you would be thinking about or maybe trying as a community college president or even trustee, things that people should think about?
Sure. I guess my reaction, Larry, is twofold. One, community college has traditionally been counter-cyclical, but that does not mean it will run counter to a pandemic. This is certainly an economic downturn, but it's an economic downturn driven by a global health crisis. And so I'm not surprised that the enrollment numbers don't look typical for an economic crisis. As you mentioned, a lot of people are really hard hit by this. Every dollar makes a difference. People are deeply distracted by family health crises going on all around them. Communities have been put under immense strain. And you know, when your personal capacity for growth and personal agency is taken away by something like a global pandemic that's hitting hard in your community, your ability to decide, yes, I'm going to take on an educational program that's going to be really challenging for me is really reduced. So, you know, I think it's important for us to remember that this is not really just an economic downturn. And one which we would expect students to respond to by seeking out more education. It's a global pandemic that has infected or harmed people's sense of agency. So I think we have to respond to that. I would say, you know, for all the benefits of online education, I remain deeply committed to in-person education and time spent with students in the classroom. And I think, frankly, part of the downturn is that students really do hunger for that. Particularly for older students, that may seem less intimidating. It's what they're used to. So for me, I think a big emphasis has to be trying to return to at least a blended enrollment environment as soon as we can, where we're certainly offering as many online opportunities as we can, but also really offering the in-person experience as well, because I just think with the plethora of online opportunities, many of which are very low cost right now, it's going to be hard for community colleges necessarily to compete for all that mind share. The other thing I would just say is, and I kind of hate to say this, but I really believe in the importance of marketing. You know, the honest answer is lots of people who should be thinking about pursuing an education, getting additional skills, getting additional capabilities, may not be aware of what their opportunities really are. And so we have to do a better job, I think, both as individual campuses, but also as a system, to try to reach out to people where they are, and let them know that there's a remarkable opportunity at very low cost that will be of great benefit to them, not just through this COVID crisis, but long term as the economy tries to adjust to all the changes it's undergone.
I have some questions that have come in through Q&A.
Great.
On a national level, is support for community college housing a possible outcome?
That's a really great question. You know, I would say that may be one of those issues that is brought up in an infrastructure bill. You know, the Biden administration has talked about a very large public works bill to create jobs and rebuild infrastructure. A piece of that could very easily go to college and university construction. And so I could imagine, right, as part of that, and it would take a great government relations effort, but getting funding to help community colleges develop housing on their campuses. I also think the idea of a much more flexible Pell Grant that people can use for a whole range of expenses could also go a long way to meeting some of the housing needs of our students. Right now, I think students are really forced to prioritize their dollars, and the Pell Grant, because it can't be used for the whole range of expenses they have, may be of less value than it should be to particularly low-income folks who work. And so the idea that we could take those dollars and make them a little more flexible, I think could have a big impact.
Thank you. Second question. Has there been any conversation about tying federal support for free college to investments by states in undergraduate education? Many states have gutted the support they provide.
So one of the things that's going to happen this year is reauthorization of the Higher Education Act. It was debated a lot in the last Congress, but they never were able to reach a consensus on what the future of higher education should look like. There is some discussion about linking assistance to colleges and universities to various state actions or institutional actions. Some people have called for increased government support, but only if it's matched at the state level. Others have called for increased government support, but only if there's cost containment efforts at the institutional or system level. So I think we're going to see all of those debated over the course of next year, and I don't have a good crystal ball to tell you where those are going to come out. I would say that I don't think there are going to be a lot of strings attached to federal funding in the likely stimulus bill that we will see as a response to COVID. I think everyone understands that states right now are facing really serious budget crunches. They're not going to be able to match federal funds. So I would assume we'll have a pretty straightforward federal assistance program in the short term, with potential strings requiring state action in the long term.
Next question. How do you think the Biden administration will address DACA and the future of undocumented students?
I think there's going to be a 180-degree reversal from the programs and positions of the Trump administration. There's very strong support within the incoming administration team for changes to DACA. I would so that people are allowed to stay in the country and allowed to pursue their education, and that we will find a way to normalize their status as a matter of immigration. I think people see this as just a fundamental human rights issue, And I would be stunned if those changes are not made by executive order very early in the Biden administration. So I think we can see at least a return to where we were under the Obama administration. I think, President-elect Biden had talked about the importance of a large-scale, comprehensive immigration reform bill. I think that had a better chance of getting traction when Democrats thought they might have a chance of a majority in the Senate of 4 or 5 votes. I think that's once again going to be caught up in party politics. But immediate relief for DACA students to help them feel secure and stay in the country, pursue their education, normalize their immigration status, I think is uncontroversial with this administration.
We have time for one more. Can you expand and advise on what we should specifically do individually and collectively with such advocates in the White House to support community colleges?
So I would say 2 things. I think, all of you are important leaders in your community. If you're a professor or a staff member or an administrator, a president or chancellor, those are positions that state, local, and national politicians take very seriously. And so, individual efforts of advocacy, I think, really do add up in a democracy. And so, I think making sure that your elected leaders, your members of Congress, your statewide leaders understand that community colleges are important and that they need their support for your work is really important. I would say, though, that in something like our current situation, your government affairs teams are going to be essential. And if you have, an ability to put extra time and support into their work, now is the time to do it. There's going to be major changes in higher education in the next year. There's a window here with this administration to make some very positive changes. And, I think your government relations teams, both as a system through the league and individual institutions, are going to be really important. I just think what happens in the next 9 months could be decisive in terms of charting a new direction for community colleges. And with that, I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk with you. And I'm easily reached at the Aspen Institute. So if people have follow-up or conversations they'd love to have, I would be more than willing to do that. But for now, once again, I just want to thank you for your hard work and wish you good luck in the months ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Vice President Kroger, for your realistic remarks about the results of the election. I think it's important for us to know the landscape that we're up against, because with that knowledge, we can do the best we can for students. So thank you so much for your incisive remarks. And now I want to tell you about the rest of the week. Throughout this week, we have many outstanding sessions planned for you. We begin each day at 11 a.m. with a keynote, followed by concurrent sessions at 12:30 and again at 1:30. Daily caucus sessions are at 2:30 and 3:45. During breaks and lunch, you will have an opportunity to attend corporate partner mini sessions and get your questions answered. Session Zoom links and passwords are available in the event app and will be emailed out daily. All sessions will be recorded and released after convention concludes. Please complete your session and convention evaluations available in the event app. We encourage you to use the web browser version of our event app and keep it open during the day to receive updates about the convention. So happy to be with you today. Enjoy your afternoon sessions. We are adjourned.